Here with us now is consultant and Democratic strategist Reyahd Kazmi and GOP political strategist and commentator Rina Shah. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Well,
Good morning. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for asking. First up, Reyahd, I'll begin with you. Harris is preparing for a battleground blitz on Tuesday with her running mate, whoever that is. That begins in Pennsylvania, where voters are sharing what they'd like to see in the choice. We're going to start with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Let's take a listen to this.
He's my man, and he's always been my man. And if he's running, he's got my vote. And it's not like Kamala didn't have my vote. Now he's got double the vote from me.
So that interview came from our Caitlin Becker. All of our correspondents have been working really hard to get on the ground and talk to these voters. Reyahd, how much does it matter that he's in the critical swing state of Pennsylvania?
I think it's very telling with the campaign kickoff with the new vice presidential candidate on the ticket being in Pennsylvania. I think that puts Governor Shapiro in a very strong position with that being the first state. That said, though, as great as he is, as great as a campaigner as he is, I think it's going to be very difficult to have a first Black female and East Asian descent woman running who's fairly progressive with a Jewish candidate. I don't think that that is a problem personally, but I think that America is very interesting. And I think that that will be something that will come out. He has been fairly centrist, which is helpful for her, as she's seen by lots of moderates as being very progressive. At the end of the day, Kamala Harris will be at the top of the ticket. I think that she has to be very wise in who she selects. I know she will be as her vice presidential candidate. I think Pennsylvania will go with Kamala Harris, regardless of if it's Governor Shapiro or not. But I think that her selection is going to tell what kind of pathway the campaign will be taking as we enter this next less than 100 days.
Well, Rina, he's popular in his home state. Shapiro has a 61% approval rating. How popular is he around the country, you think?
Well, Governor Shapiro is a bit lesser known, of course, compared to some of these that we're looking at. I mean, governors are known, but they're unknowns. And so a pick of him would, I believe would be a calculated risk, because this pro-Israel stance he has is problematic for this campaign. This campaign needs to turn out young progressives, get them very excited to show up at the polls. And they have been the most vocal about a ceasefire. So when we talk about Palestinian support and non-support for what Israel is doing in Gaza, we have to factor in how Shapiro plays with that young progressive base. And I think that's problematic for this campaign. But again, those who do know him around the country know that he brings those centrist vibes. It's about way more than that. It's not just a simple 1-2 with Shapiro. He does bring some other factors that complicate him. But again, when we look at turnout, that's where I believe of all the picks, he's the most dangerous, because he can turn off an entire segment that the Democrats really need.
Yeah, well, the most important thing is to do no harm, right? We're also realizing more and more, one heartbeat away, we had this assassination attempt on the former president, and Biden, with his age as well, has brought this to the forefront in a lot of ways as well. Let's talk about Senator Mark Kelly. What do you think, Reyahd? What do you think of him?
Quite frankly, I think that Mark Kelly is the safest when you talk about a calculated risk. Granted, you are putting in position the state of Arizona Senate seat. I think, again, goes back to the telling. I think that Mark Kelly is the best position when it comes to who, like you just said, is next up. He is someone who not only is a military veteran fighter pilot, he was not only fought for our country in America, he fought for our country in space. He's intergalactic. And I think in addition to him, he has a very strong story to tell. Of all of these potential candidates, his story is the strongest, not only from him personally, but from his wife experiencing gun violence. I mean, he is very strong on immigration laws being in the border state, in addition, gun safety laws, and someone who obviously has a gun. What I do like about him, in addition to what I just said, is if he is selected by the campaign, I think it sees us as Democrats that, hey, we want to stabilize Arizona, Nevada, We think that Vice President Harris will do fine up in the Midwest battlegrounds. Minnesota, I'm sorry, Governor Walz is a great guy, but I'm not sure that that state necessarily matters. We're looking at Wisconsin, Michigan. By far, in my opinion, outside of Governor Walz, Mark Kelly speaks across the country, whereas a Governor Bashir, who's awesome, would be a Southeast candidate, in my opinion. I think him being a deacon in his church would speak to a lot of people down in North Carolina and Georgia. But I think if Senator Kelly is selected, there is a strong pathway that we want to shore up the West, and we think that Vice President Harris can do well in the upper Midwest as well as Southeast.
Yeah, and really likely looking for whoever she chooses to potentially fill a hole. And she has been called the border czar. She's walked away from that title, whatever the title was. She was tasked with handling the border, and it's an absolute mess right now. So, Rina, do you think he could really help her? Senator Kelly, do you think he could help her with that?
Well, the way I see the strategy forward for the campaign is with the VP pick is a southwest to southeast strategy, because the Sun Belt, again, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, is a place where traditionally Donald Trump has done better. So the Democrats want to make up that deficit there. And you see recent polling where Kamala Harris has done that. But with Kelly, you can get that not just appeal of somebody who's that all-American hero type, but in a state that is ever more important than we've seen in previous cycles. So I really believe Kelly would be a solid pick, one that has the least amount of complications, though a little bit has come out in the recent weeks about some of his business dealings prior to him going to the Senate. But I think putting that aside for a moment, he does bring a fair amount of charisma. He's super confident, of course, giving off that calm confidence that most people who work in STEM fields do. As an astronaut, I do think he essentially can play that all-American hero card. But going beyond that, we want charisma to shape this ticket too, right? You've got a VP who is charismatic, who's got a lot of energy behind her. You need somebody who matches that. And to me, he brings the best match on that.
Yeah, and we'll likely see a debate with whoever the pick is with J.D. Vance. So you want to make sure that that split screen is in the favor of Kamala Harris if Kamala Harris is trying to pick her running mate, right? Thank you so much. I'm going to let our viewers one more time see those 6 contenders that we have. And who knows, maybe there's even going to be a dark horse. But likely we will be hearing today, tomorrow, or Tuesday early because they'll be campaigning together. Potential Harris VP picks right there for you. Reyahd, Kazmi, and Rina Shah, thank you so much for joining us here on Morning in America. Have a great Sunday.